What's up, guys? My name is Daniel. I draw cars and turn them into 3D prints using HueForge. Today we are going to talk about filament colors, TD, what you should buy, what kind of filament you should look out for, what filament you should start out with when you are starting your HueForge journey.
Sounds like a lot of
Now, before you get any kind of filament, you can go ahead into HueForge and you can bring in an image that you want to make, and you can actually just use the filament library to kind of get a general idea of what kind of filaments you're going to want for your projects, because only you're going to know what filaments are going to work best for you. The way filaments manufacture, typically with these bigger companies, you throw a bunch of pellets into a hopper with some pigment and it runs through a screw. It's not very accurate as far as how much pigment is getting in throughout the batch as it's running through the machine. With that in mind, the library is great as like a general gist of what the TD could be. There are some brands that are more consistent than others, but in general, you're gonna get variation of 1 to 2 TD depending on the spool. The bare minimum necessities are black, gray, and white. Now, all black filament is basically the same. Pick your favorite black, it'll be perfect for you. The next color that you're gonna want is those grays.
I have light gray, medium gray, dark gray.
You're gonna want a light gray and a dark gray. It doesn't really matter as far as TD is concerned for grays. We're just using gray as a shadow for your white filaments. To do that nice transition between black and white, it really makes shadows pop in your filaments. The next filament that you're gonna want is a white filament. Now, white is a little bit different. You're gonna want a low TD, a mid TD, and a high TD. Now, a low TD, that's like a 0 to a 4. A mid TD is anywhere from 4 to 8, and then a high TD is 8 to 12, and then above that is transparent. The general rule of thumb is, if you want a low TD filament, look for your matte colors. Your matte colors have a matting agent in it that generally make your filaments a low TD. So if there's some color specifically that you want in a low TD, go ahead and look at a filament manufacturer's matte filament line, because almost all of those are going to be a low TD. Same with silk filament, but I don't typically recommend using silk for HueForge. It can help enhance your pictures, but I personally have clogged a lot of hot ends with silk running at 0.04 layer heights, so it's just not the best for HueForge, but matte filaments are perfectly okay. I love using Bamboo Labs Jade White. That filament seems to be pretty consistent across the board for the 1.5 years that I've been using it for HueForge. As you're moving into the higher TD whites, any kind of hyper or meta or just any of your high speed filament, that is going to generally be a higher TD filament. So now that you have a good 5 filaments, those are your grayscale colors, those are going to be used throughout your HueForge journey. You are always going to need a good black, you're always going to need good grays, and you're always going to need good whites. That is a good base to have. Honorable mention would be blue gray from Bamboo. I just love the way that it makes shadows look in most of my HueForges. Now, as we move into colors, like I said, you're gonna want a good mix of filament TDs. And honestly, throughout your HueForge journey, you're gonna find different scenarios where you're gonna wish that you had all 3 of these in every single color of the rainbow. But that's just not realistic if you're not made of money. So where do you want to start? The place that I would start if you're on a budget is the fiery colors, red, yellow, and orange, just because it's really easy to wrap your head around how those colors are going to blend as you're learning HueForge and how to use the program. Like I said, matte filaments are going to be your low TD. Regular PLA typically is in the mid-range, can be lower, can be higher. And then your high-speed hyper filaments, those are going to be your high TDs. So with that in mind, there are some exceptions to those rules. Red typically is on the higher side with the regular PLAs, so just keep that in mind whenever you're purchasing. And then you're gonna want an orange just to have on hand, because sometimes whenever you're mixing red to yellow, you'll get orange in between. You won't get the really saturated orange that you might be looking for. So it's just good to have those 3 colors. So as you get comfortable with using HueForge and making these fiery looking HueForges and just making really cool looking images, I would recommend going into the cooler colors, the blues, the purples, the greens. Really, at this point in the game, once you get past fiery, you're gonna want every color in the rainbow. Now, typically, greens, those are around mid TDs, unless, again, we're dealing with matte or hyper filaments. With dark green specifically, you're gonna have a really hard time finding the higher TD dark green. Chrominal has a dark green. We haven't really been able to find many dark greens that are that higher TD just because of the pigment that they use. Purples, I would recommend just getting a dark and a light purple. Those are pretty versatile across the board because you're using those darker colors as a base layer, not typically up taller in the image. I recommend getting a dark blue. It's kind of hard to find a dark blue and a high TD unless you go look at Chrominal again. Let me stop and talk about Chrominal for a second. Chrominal filament was developed for HueForge because there was a gap where we couldn't find like a dark blue, a dark brown, a dark green, and some grays in a higher TD filament. So those were developed specifically with HueForge in mind. If you were interested in Chrominal filament, it is on the HueForge website for you to purchase. The great thing about HueForge in general is that once you buy a kilogram specifically for HueForge, you don't go through that filament very quickly at all. So you'll have it for a very long time. Look at all the filament that I have behind me. I've had most of this filament since the beginning of my HueForge journey. This is eSun's old style spool. I've had this since day one of HueForging. So with that in mind, go ahead and test out different filaments. See how different filaments blend with each other. Don't just go buy every single spool of Sunlu. Don't go buy every single spool of Polymaker, whatever the case may be, just because you think you want every color of the rainbow. Just go and test out different TD values, different colors, see what works best for you and what works best for your wallet, most importantly, because it will get expensive very quickly. This is something that is underutilized a lot, where you can just put an image in and go to town just testing it before you actually print it. Also, to save a little bit of money, get 250 gram sample spools. HueForge doesn't use a lot of filament per print. Remember this. It only uses a lot of colors. So you want a good wide spread of colors. You don't necessarily want a lot of actual filament. So again, 250 gram sample spools are great because not only does it give you an even better idea of what kind of filament you might want in the future, but it also gives you enough filament to really run any HueForge that you want for a very long time. And you can print a respooler so that you can run it through your AMS if that is a concern to you. But most printers, you know, on an Ender 3 or whatever, you're doing manual swaps anyways. There's no real reason to use anything bigger than a 250 gram spool. So to wrap this up, I'll just say that you're gonna want every color of the rainbow in 3 different TDs, from opaque to transparent. There are 2 brands that I want to mention specifically for your high transparencies that you're just going to want out of the gate: Polymaker and Bamboo Lab. Polymaker has translucent gray, cyan, magenta, and yellow. Those 4 filaments are very great. They're Pan Chroma translucent series. Great for HueForge. They were developed with HueForge in mind. Bamboo Lab has their lithophane series, the CMY from them. Also very good option for HueForge. I hope this video helps you in some way, shape, or form. If it did, please like, share, and subscribe with your friends. Comment down below if you have any questions. I read all of the comments in the comment section and I try to get back to every single one of you. I've also started a Patreon for anybody that wants to support me. I have all of my designs up for you to download and welcome pack, as well as a exclusive Discord if you need help one-on-one. With that being said, thanks again for watching. I hope to see you in the future.